The moment I saw the calendar invite, I knew. Mid-year pulse check. That's HR's code for bring your badge, you're done. It was 6:47 a.m., and I hadn't even made it to the kitchen for coffee when Jason, our new CRO, had already left 9 Slack messages. 8 of them were passive-aggressive. The ninth, just one word, update. All caps, no punctuation. He typed like a toddler in a Wall Street costume. Cute, right? Except this toddler had just gutted my team, stolen my accounts, and was now sniffing around for a fall guy when things started to slip. Guess who fit the bill? He thought I wouldn't notice what he was doing, cutting backup staff, bungling SLA renewals, leaving legal out of the loop until contracts were on life support. But I noticed. I always notice. I've spent 7 years holding this place together with caffeine, red lines, and a binder that made TSA agents nervous. Every contract clause, every change order, every client meltdown, it was all in that binder. Color-coded tabs. Paper trails even the feds would admire. Jason was a whiteboard marker kind of guy. Big ideas, no substance. Called himself a scalpel for inefficiency. Meanwhile, I was cauterizing wounds he didn't even know existed. But now he was ready to take credit and shove me out the door like surplus toner. They called me in that afternoon. HR placed a water bottle in front of me like I was about to give a eulogy. Denise from HR blinked like a broken Roomba. Jason sat beside her, freshly tanned from whatever corporate retreat he conned his way into last week. "Thanks for joining us today, Judith," Denise chirped. "We're here to review concerns around your Q3 performance." "Sure. Let's call Jason's screw-ups my performance." Then Jason leaned in with that smug grin that made me fantasize about throwing a stapler across the room. "We agree it's time for new energy in client ops." They slid the paper across, requested my resignation, effective immediately. I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I just signed. Then I picked up my bag, slung the binder over my shoulder, and smiled when Jason's eyes locked onto it. "You don't need to take that," he said, motioning at it. "It's just templates," I said softly. Denise nodded. Of course. They didn't know. They had no idea what was really in that bag, because before I left I made one tiny addition. A file marked Sierra Federal. Red tab. Inside, a clause Jason never read, because none of them did. But I wrote it. I buried it mid-contract during a 3-week crisis no one else showed up for. And that clause, if the named service officer, me, is terminated without the client's written approval, the provider is in breach. $250,000 per business day breach. I didn't look back. They thought they closed a door. I opened a vault, and the clock had already started ticking. Want to find out what happens when the fines hit $4 million before lunch? Hit that like button, comment your city, and subscribe for part 2. Trust me, Jason's about to learn what new energy really looks like. It started small. A buzz on my phone. Thursday. 4:42 p.m. The name flashing on my screen, Roland Mendy's senior legal partner. The kind of man who only calls when stock options are at risk or a lawsuit is already crawling up the company's spine. "Judith," he said, trying to sound casual. He wasn't. "We were going over the Sierra Federal contract and, there's a clause I need clarification on." "Which clause?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "Section 5B, he muttered. "The one tied to your termination and the breach penalty." I stared out the window, the sky bleeding orange over my neighbor's fence. "It's all in the binder, Roland," I said. Long silence, papers rustling. Probably sweat pooling under his tie. Then, "Right, okay, we'll circle back." They weren't confused, they were terrified. Jason had fired me without a replacement. No one briefed the client. And now the clause I inserted mid-meltdown had teeth. Monday morning, 8:03 a.m. it hit. A one-line email from Sierra Federal. "Why was your named officer terminated without notification or approved replacement?" No greeting. No sign-off. Just a corporate nuke, launched straight into our executive inboxes. By 8:09, Roland had dragged in compliance, external counsel, and 2 guys whose names only appear when the DOJ gets involved. Jason, he strolled in at 8:35, late as usual, smelling like eucalyptus and ego. Still convinced we could just backfill the title and move on. He laughed when they showed him the clause. "Come on," he scoffed. "It's just scare language." Roland didn't even blink. "It's enforceable, it was signed, and it's already in breach." Jason paled, literally, like someone sucked the toner out of him. "We'll just have Marcia sign off retroactively," he mumbled. That's when Roland hit play. A Zoom recording from May. Marcia, Sierra's procurement lead, saying in crystal clear HD, "No backdating. I want written approval beforehand or we pull." The room went silent, like funeral silent, and then the youngest legal associate, bless him, asked the only question that mattered. "How big is the penalty?" Roland's answer. $250,000 per business day. Starting today. Back at my apartment, I didn't even open LinkedIn, didn't tweak my resume, didn't chase job postings like a panicked mouse in a maze. I stirred coffee, watched the rain, waited. Because while Jason was dry shaving in a hotel mirror, I knew something he didn't. Sierra wasn't the only clause I'd planted. Monday, 2:47 p.m. Legal thought Sierra Federal was the end of it. One fire to contain, one penalty to negotiate, but they didn't know what I'd done in the 9 months leading up to my exit. See, while Jason was pitching synergy slides to the board, I was cleaning up contracts no one else had the guts or knowledge to fix. Sierra Federal, that was just the first tripwire. The second, Halen Tech, our largest cybersecurity vendor. The third, State Path Education, a $30 million government implementation, year 3 of a 5-year rollout. And the fourth, Nexlogi, a logistics firm tied to the governor's brother. Quiet, powerful, untouchable. Each one had their own version of Section 5 be different words. Same fuse. No replacement named officer, no client sign-off. Instant breach. $250,000 a day, per contract. By Tuesday afternoon, 3 more breach notices hit the shared inbox. That's when legal's shared folder turned into a digital crime scene. Screenshots, highlighted PDFs. Slack messages from Jason saying, "All handled." And in the middle of it all, my email signature forwarded by a confused intern. For clarity, I remain the named service officer unless otherwise documented. Jason tried to spin it. Called an emergency all-hands meeting. Flashed some cheesy deck with stock photos of mountain peaks and talked about temporary disconnects. He compared a federal compliance breach to a power outage. Marcus laughed, out loud. And while Jason rambled about turbulence and team spirit, Roland from legal was 4 hours deep in contract audits. His eyes bloodshot, fingers shaking from too much coffee and not enough hope. And then came the real kicker. Eric, remember the junior attorney who once asked if a clause could be more, found it. A printout from May. An email chain. Marcia to me. Clause 5B looks solid. Thanks for prioritizing continuity. We'll move forward once you're locked in as the named officer. Stamped, dated, filed. They had no escape. That night, Roland sent a one-line email to the CEO and board. Recommend external counsel and immediate damage control. Exposure exceeds $12 million. Jason, he vanished. Rumor was he went home to reflect. Translation. Sweat through his fitted Lululemon while Googling, "Can I be sued for breach if I didn't read the MSA?" By Wednesday morning, the office wasn't just quiet. It was on lockdown. 3 federal contracts frozen. 2 board members demanding internal audits. Compliance flagged all client-facing work for immediate review. And then, at 10:12 a.m., I got an email. Subject. Opportunity for re-engagement consultant path. They wanted me back. But only as a temp. No title. No power. Just mop up what's left and disappear quietly. They still didn't get it. I didn't reply to the email. Didn't even blink. I forwarded it to Darren, my lawyer. The kind of guy who makes Goliaths flinch. He's got the voice of a velvet chainsaw and a Rolodex of fear. He called me immediately. "They want you back as a consultant," he laughed. "They think you're a Band-Aid." "No," I said. "They think I'm still quiet. Time to change that." 2 hours later, I dictated a response over speakerphone. Calm, sharp, unapologetic. Decline the consultant offer. But I'm open to full reinstatement, on new terms. I don't report to the CRO, I report directly to the board. And the CRO, he's gone, effective immediately. Darren's laugh turned into a growl. "God, I love you. I'll draft it tonight." By 2:18 p.m., their inboxes lit up. Subject, terms for reinstatement. J. Fairburn. Inside, it was surgical. Title, Executive Vice President, Contract Strategy Reporting Line. Direct to Board Chair Termination Clause, Board Majority Vote required. Cause must be documented. Transition, 60 days minimum unless ethics breach. Comp, immediate stock vesting. At the bottom, one signature line. Marked uneditable. Roland saw it first. He didn't flinch. He knew this was their last lifeline. The CEO reviewed it in silence, alone in his office. No one knows how long he stared at that screen, but when he emerged, his voice was lower. Shoulders smaller. By nightfall, the board convened. 3 had already called me. They didn't see an ex-employee. They saw the firewall. The only one who knew where every fuse was hidden and how many were already lit. One director, a former general counsel, put it bluntly, "This isn't a rehire, it's a buyback, and the price is fair." At 9:41 p.m., the final offer was sent. Full reinstatement. My terms, Jason out, they didn't beg. They didn't spin, they simply asked, "When can you start?" I didn't answer, not right away. Instead, I took a walk. Cold breeze, quiet street. The kind of night that tastes like a second chance. By the time I got home, I knew. I typed just one sentence. "I'll be in at 9 a.m., my binder stays on my desk this time." The company inbox lit up with a memo wrapped in corporate perfume. "We'd like to thank Jason Breer for his contributions to our growth strategy." Translation: Jason got canned so fast his badge was still warm, and his protein bar was still melting in the executive fridge. No one believed the spin, not the interns, not the admins, certainly not legal. By 8 o'clock a.m., the office was a whisper factory. "Did you hear Judith's clause cost us $8 million? She's reporting directly to the board now." They didn't just rehire her, they restructured around her. And then 8:59 a.m. I walked in, no music, no speech, just the sound of my boots tapping against the tile and the black binder under my arm. Every intern turned to stare. One VP ducked into a side room. My desk, still mine. Framed drawing from my niece still on the shelf. Posted under the monitor still said, "Don't let the fire spread. Own the extinguisher." And the chair? It still had the lumbar pillow I used every audit season when the migraines hit. I set my binder down with a quiet thud. By noon, legal had already requested 3 copies, one for compliance, one for procurement, one just in case the auditors ask. The same binder they once rolled their eyes at. Now they called it the Compliance Bible. Even Roland floated an idea: digitize it, build a Judith protocol for future hires. I didn't gloat, I didn't strut, I worked. By 2:15 p.m., Sierra Federal reauthorized one paused project. By 2:30, the fines stopped ticking. By 3 o'clock, I had a standing invite to weekly board meetings. Then came the final moment. The boardroom. Not a room, a reckoning. I walked in with no entourage, no laptop, just the binder. I placed it on the table, solid, heavy. Even the board chair adjusted his seat. The CEO started to speak, tight smile, thinner voice. I didn't acknowledge him. Instead, I nodded at Roland. He stood with a folder marked Confidential Executive Addendum. And read, "Effective immediately, per board consensus, Judith Fairburn is reinstated as Executive Vice President, reporting directly to the board chair. Future termination requires a majority board vote, documented cause, and 60-day transition period unless in breach of ethics." Then I pulled out one page from the binder, slid it across the table. It was the new MSA framework. Indexed, reviewed, ironclad. The CEO stared at it. I looked him dead in the eye. "Let's never miss our targets again." Then I closed the binder. Soft click, sounded like a gavel. They didn't clap. They didn't need to, they listened. Outside that room, my name was already being added to the door: Chief Contract Strategy Officer. Corner office, Jason's old one. Same view, different power. Inside, the binder sat center stage. Clean. Sharp, ready, because this wasn't revenge, this was restoration. They fired me like I was invisible. I returned like gravity. Ever been underestimated in the workplace? Drop your city in the comments, and hit that subscribe if you've ever been the one holding it all together in silence. Because sometimes, silence isn't surrender. It's the final clause. And this time, it costs millions.